The barrier to entry to this profession, strategy, whatever you want to call it, crumbled for me 100%. So it's like, okay, so then at the end of it, I was like, what's next? Let's do this.
All right, today we're doing something very different. I have the privilege of actually interviewing one of our students, but also now peer, right, and confidant. So we do deals together. I'm super excited to introduce Jared Brenchley. Take us on your journey. How did you get started in real estate investing? How did you decide to go from where you were to where you are now? I'm dying to hear your full story.
That's a great question. So before I met you and Mitch, I worked at Walmart for like 12 years.
Yeah.
So I was stocking shelves, and I was a Walmart manager. So I got to work overtime without getting paid overtime, which is freaking awesome. And so I was working 60 hours a week on average. Holiday times, like I was 80 hours, like I'm not even joking. And when my wife got pregnant with our third child, there was like a 8-year gap between number 2 and number 3. I don't know what happened, something in the water, she's got pregnant, I don't know what happened. But it was a surprise. But I had those moments where it was kind of like a paradigm shift. You know, so I remembered all of the things I missed my first 2 kids, and how I wasn't there because I was working at Walmart. Like if anyone's worked at Walmart before, or any retail, restaurant business, at holiday times, you are at the store. The weekends, you're at the store. You know, you're working odd hours, and that was my life for over a decade. And so I remembered all of those things I missed of my first 2 kids, the dance recitals, the soccer games, the first words. Like my son's first word was dad, but it was like, who's this dad guy I keep hearing about? Because I don't see him.
Picture.
You know? Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's the dude. Okay, that's the guy. And so I knew something had to change, right? I didn't know what. Real estate was definitely not on my radar, like not even really close. Because I thought you have $1 million in the bank, perfect credit, and I had neither one of those 2. So it wasn't even my radar whatsoever. But I had to send that kind of vibration out in the world and into the universe, like something had to change. And I didn't know what, so I was going back to school actually. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. People tell me the problems all the time, like I might as well get paid for it. You know, let's do that.
Feel that.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, maybe I can start doing that. It's gonna take me 8 years just to get another job, but that's what you're taught is like, if you want to change something, you got to go back to school. You got to do, you know, all of this stuff to change your life, right? So I figured I had to go back to school for another 8 more years. And that's when a friend of mine at church, he came to me. And he did a terrible job asking me to come to this event. It was terrible. He was like, hey, come on down to this thing, learn to pay for your house quicker, about real estate. And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm not down for snake oil, but yeah, cool, thanks, bro. But my wife she came up like halfway through was talking about it, and she heard it, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm interested. I'm like, oh, son of a man.
Well, because if he's interested, you're going to have to do it
exactly,
now.
Yeah. Because we've been married for 17 years now. At the time, it was like 12. I wanted to keep it. I wanted to get to the next year married. So if she wanted to go, we went, and that's when I met Mitch. And he was in front of the room, and he was like, what's this bearded guy selling?
Right.
You know, I was just like the entire time. If you would have gone back, 6 years and took a picture of me, my family, my wife was like this the whole time, and like at first was like, oh God. What is this? Is this thing gonna another hour? Are you kidding me? And that was my mindset. But like as he was talking, it just drove me nuts. And what he was doing, he kept on making sense. And it's like, oh, that I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah.
Oh, you really can do things like this. You don't have to have perfect credit. Right. You don't have to have $1 million to make. Now, if you had those, does it help?
Sure.
Yeah, duh, right? But that's not a requirement to start. The barrier to entry to this profession, strategy, whatever you want to call it, crumbled for me 100%. So it's like, okay, so then at the end of it, I was like, what's next? Let's do this. And we were so excited. So that's how I got introduced with Mitch. We got started, and a lot of cool things have happened ever since.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had a very similar experience. I think actually we got started like the same.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close.
Almost time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's exciting to be somewhere. And this was my experience. Was I showed up, and within 20 minutes, my walls did come down finally. Because what happens is I learned more in 2 hours than I learned the entire time I owned a business.
Right.
So for someone that worked at Walmart, it doesn't matter where you're at. Like all of a sudden you're going, wait, why doesn't everybody know this?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, you almost feel like you've been punked, right?
Like, why if this is true, then why didn't anyone tell me this? You know what I mean? It's just like,
the norm in society. So talk to me about, so you said, okay, I'm going to go all in, right? I'm going to start this real estate investing
100%.
thing. How long did it take from you to say, I'm doing this, to actually quitting Walmart?
So great question. And I didn't have any real estate background whatsoever. So honestly, it was because me and my wife, we never had that moment where like, well, should we do this? What do you think? It was like, we looked at each other like, okay, so how are we going to do this?
Right.
Like that was our, she's amazing. She's the soul bond. So we just had that moment. It's like, yes. And so I was like, so honey, I'm working all these hours. I'm going to school and because I didn't know this was going to be as great as it really was.
Sure.
So I was like, I still want to go to this. I still want to try to finish my degree and do all this stuff, but this is going to be your thing. Oh. And this is how she was like, yeah, perfect. This is going to be my thing. Like, okay, cool. Awesome. You know, she was trying, but it's just like, I'm not quite getting it. And so, but during this whole time when she was just not getting it, no fault to her own, but I was watching it. I did what Tony Robbins said is like, no extra time, net time, no extra time. And it was like, I was listening to classes when I was working, when I was driving. And I was like, oh, okay. And things started to click. And so I was like, I kind of like this thing. And my wife's like, oh, that's good.
Good, because I can't, yeah.
So it started after I had that season of learning, then I had a season of action. And it was just like spending 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day on making a phone call and sometimes just one phone call a day. Or it could have been like one knocking on door, whatever it was. You know, it was just that short period of time until we got into our first transaction. Was a fourplex in Indiana, a different state.
Oh.
So we bought the fourplex, and then we had a whole fiasco. That's a whole nother story. It's entire video just for that one fourplex. But we got our first rent check, and it was like, honey,
we did it.
Look,
we did it.
Look, this is the thing. And it was amazing because that was like another, like, just turn on the gas. Because it's yes, I believe, then yes. But then it was like when you get that first check, that belief check, it's like, that tasted really good.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want more of that. Let's get some more of those checks.
We call them shut up checks.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Shut up checks.
The belief checks, shut up checks.
Yeah.
It fits all subscriptions.
Yeah.
So then at a time I had more money in my bank account than it would take me like 2 years at Walmart to make. And then my wife encouraged me, like, you just need to quit. I'm like, all right, well, when I listen to you, things work out, so let's do that. It's terrifying.
Sure.
Because I didn't have that steady, quote unquote, steady income. And everything was dependent on me and my efforts. I didn't have a boss telling me what to do other than my wife. And I liked listening to her. So, I mean, it was exciting times. Yeah. So it took me about, that's a very long answer to your short question, but it took me about a year from meeting you guys to actually being able to quit the job that I was in for 12 years. Okay. So, yeah.
But that's a journey, right? And it is a process, right? It takes time for you to develop a different mindset and a belief in who you are. Because, I mean, we can do anything we want. It's just here, right?
Absolutely.
We hold ourselves back,
Absolutely.
and that's super frustrating. But honestly, right out the get-go, I remember you just being a firecracker. Like, you have always had a ton of energy, a ton of enthusiasm.
Still,
and
yeah.
Zig says it best, right? So a sale is just simply a transfer of enthusiasm, right? And so you always did have this kind of just high intensity, high energy, excitement. And I think that really aided in your success. I mean, being willing to talk to people and not afraid to talk to people.
Oh, I was still terrified.
Yeah?
Don't get me wrong. I was terrified.
Okay, tell me more about that.
If I was to be brutally honest, when I'm making phone calls, and there's been plenty of times in my career when I'm making 600 phone calls in a day, using a dialer, so it doesn't sound as impressive as that. But making 600 phone calls a day, I'm still nervous on that first phone call.
Yeah.
When I hear that ring, I'm just like, don't pick up.
Yeah.
But after they pick up, it's like, okay, yeah.
Pick up.
Yeah, no worries, I got this. So, yeah.
So you transitioned, you did do a lot of door knocking, like you started pillaging neighborhoods and doing like notice of defaults, right?
Yeah.
And so from there you started doing wholesaling?
The great thing about real estate, there's so many different ways of making money. You can find one that fits your personality. My personality is like, I'm great at like knocking on doors, talking to people, building that confidence, that rapport quickly, and helping people. That gave me such a high, like where they're like, I had people in closing tables where they're just in tears because they were going to lose everything. Right. You know, their credit was going to be destroyed. They were, you know, or they're like, maybe they got left with this house, they're inherited, and they don't know what to do, and no realtor touch it because it's like about caving in. Yeah. And there's so many challenges where I'm able to come in and help. So I love that. And so I was like, dude, this is wholesaling thing. Like, it's great. I get to find a seller, and then 2 weeks later get paid 10, 15 grand. I'm like, I'm okay with that. Those are bigger paychecks than my every 2 weeks in Walmart paychecks. Yeah. So yeah, it was a lot bigger by just a smidgen more.
Any tips and tricks that you wanted to, the last little second, anything that you wanted to?
Tips or tricks? I think if anyone's starting and they're just nervous to getting, I think they just need to lean into the suck.
I love that.
Like it's just, you know that whatever you're going to do, especially when you're just learning, you're going to be terrible. Just like I was saying before, you're going to suck. And you have to be okay with that. And if you're ever worried about that, if they think back to the time, because there was a time that they sucked at something.
Oh, yeah.
And now they're okay at it or great at it. Mm-hmm. So think about that feeling, that fear, and then now you're like the first time I drove up the freeway, I was terrified. Right. Sweating bullets, and a 16-year-old me just like white knuckling it. And my driving instructor was just like this too, because he was terrified too for some reason. I don't know why.
Right.
But now I'm going to the freeway, driving with my knee, eating a burrito, putting on mascara on, and I don't do mascara, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, it's nothing. It's the same thing. It's just knocking on the door. It's just when you start taking that action and know that's gonna suck, your own can go up.
Yeah.
So I try to be as terrible as I can at first, and then I get better.
That's great advice, because that is what it takes, right? You have to fail fast. You have to be okay with failing and knowing that really you don't fail unless you quit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's the only thing. So
Yeah.
as long as you don't quit, you're just still moving forward, right?
Just lessons learned.
Yep, one step at a time.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, it was so fun having you on here. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your story and sharing, how hard it was to go from a mindset change. But now, on the other side, I'm so grateful.
A lot different, that's for sure. It's really good.
Well, I'm so grateful to have you, and so grateful to be able to go see some of your deals and learn from you now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how we can reach out to you, how everyone can get a hold of you and support you?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to reach out to me, they just go to treelink.com/askjared. So treelink.com/askjared. You can, all my social medias are there. If you look up Jared Brenchley on Facebook or Instagram, that's my handle. So I'm easy.
He is so funny to watch. He does some of the craziest, funny Instagram videos I've ever seen. So you gotta go check him out. He is a riot, and you always will learn something. So that's obviously a good thing. Well, thank you again for coming and joining us today. We're happy to have you. Yes. And if you learned anything and you're excited to follow Jared's journey, follow our journey, or if you're excited to have a free strategy call with us, please reach out to us. Until then, see you on the flip side.